Good day, everyone, and welcome to Pinelands High School's presentation as part of World Education Week. We are honoured to be a part of this international conference, and we look forward to sharing our Rainbow Camp experience with you. We will start with a short introduction to our school and to the Rainbow Camp, followed by a panel discussion. Thereafter, we'll have some time for a quick Q&A. We hope that you enjoy our presentation and that you stay the hour with us. Enjoy.
Rainbow Camp at Pinelands High School. Pinelands High School is a public high school situated in the suburb of Pinelands, Cape Town, South Africa. We are strongly motivated and guided by our mission. We strive to be a world-class school rooted in Africa that facilitates a quality all-round education in a caring and disciplined environment. Our catchwords, excellence, leadership, and innovation ensure that we remain a school with an aspirational ethos which prepares young people for successful and fulfilled adult lives. We are a diverse school that embraces difference, is open to change, and equips our teenagers with a real-world experience. "21 years ago, the school developed a 4-day residential program entitled Rainbow Camp for grade 11 students ages 16 to 17. Students are invited to apply for a position on this camp. 20 participants are selected based on varying demographics, including race, language, gender, religion, culture, and socio-economic backgrounds. The school runs 2 Rainbow Camps a year. The program's content focuses on personal growth and development within the context of a multicultural and diverse society. A robust and challenging environment is created in which bias and stereotypes are unpacked, and anti-racism and other isms are probed. Privilege is acknowledged, and students develop compassion and build connectedness, or Ubuntu, I am because we are, an African philosophy where the individual self can only be whole in the context of the community. This transformative program has at its heart the desire to equip young people to be leaders of change in our fractured world, and in particular, our post-apartheid society.
Hi, my name is Carl Westy. I'm matriculated from Pinelands High School in 2003, and I was a part of one of these life-changing rainbow camps back in 2001. And one thing I can say is that it's a camp that changed my life. I still talk about it today. It is an impactful camp. It is something that really allowed me to take out inner discrimination and stereotypes that I felt like were never there because I went to a school that was multiracial, and it made me face it in the most direct way possible. And the beautiful thing coming out of that camp is that we were splashed into a society that didn't have the benefit of the Rainbow Camp. And I suppose that was so eye-opening because from there, it made us ambassadors. It made us change agents in that moment after returning from that camp to make sure that discrimination and to make sure that any stereotypes embedded in us, whether we know it or not, are addressed head-on.
Rainbow Camp really opened my eyes to a lot of issues and the reality of how these issues affect people. We have to actively think about and engage with these issues. It's not enough to simply not take part in prejudice and oppression. I have to actively fight against it.
I never knew that spending a few days with people that I didn't really know would change so much in my life. Every activity that we did had a lesson behind it. We could teach others, be ourselves, and most importantly, make mistakes in a safe and loving space.
I found Rainbow Camp to be very eye-opening in terms of the baggage that people have and remembering to be kind to people because you really never know what people think about or how things look from other people's perspectives or what's going on in their lives. And it's a great camp, people that you've never met before. You find yourself creating new bonds and new friendships, and people that you've known for years who consider your best friends, you can find yourself learning more about them as well. So I think that it really has been one of the most interesting and kind of revolutionary experiences in high school. And I really think everyone should go on it, if not to learn more about yourself and to learn more about others. It's fun. There's a lot of raw emotion.
I am so thankful for that Pinelands High School experience, the Rainbow Camp. If you want to change the world, it starts with those little moments. And it's one of the moments from my old school that I still love so much that I'll never ever forget.
Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to our live panel discussion.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to Pinelands High School's World Education Week presentation. In case you missed our intro, we are a public co-educational high school in Cape Town, South Africa, and we serve a diverse community. My name is Dave Campbell, and I'm the school's principal. Our presentation focuses on our Rainbow Camp, a life-changing residential program for students aged 16 to 17, grade 11. The program has been running for 21 years and focuses on critical areas of personal growth and development in our multicultural and diverse society, including bias, stereotyping, and anti-racism. We are very grateful to the early founders of this program 21 years ago, Judith Barron, Murray Gibbon, Tracy Henry, and Zuleika Gayler, and in particular Judith Barron, who ran and advanced the program for many years. With me are a panel of staff and students, all who have been involved in the Rainbow Camp over the years. And I welcome them very warmly as they join us. I'd like to introduce them to you briefly. First of all, Mrs. Michelle Owen Barnard is our school counselor, psychologist, coordinator of the program. Michelle is a registered clinical psychologist. She's been involved in counseling in a variety of settings over the past 10 years. She attended Rainbow Camp as a Pinelands High School student and now has the privilege of managing and facilitating this experience for others. Mr. Abdul Hamid Peterson is a teacher and a facilitator on the program. He's taught in a range of educational settings from rural Limpopo to suburban Cape Town. He's currently the chairperson of the Compassion Centered Network and has a passion for social justice. Abdul is in charge of the school's LGBT+ society and has facilitated Rainbow Camps for 6 years. Mr. Sibusiso Kwesha is a teacher and facilitator on the program. Sibu has a master's degree in chemistry and a passion for teaching and passing on his love of learning to students, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds. His teaching experience includes working for Axiom Education in the rural Eastern Cape. Luko Jabu is in grade 11 and attended a Rainbow Camp earlier in the year before lockdown. She's a keen sports person, particularly enjoying netball and basketball. She loves poetry and songwriting and enjoys engaging with people from a wide variety of cultures and groups. She thrives on the challenge of leadership. Christopher Hawker-Jeering is in his final year at school and attended a Rainbow Camp over a year ago. Chris has a huge passion for the dramatic arts and intends using that passion to go forward in life and to teach the arts to others. His positive energy and care for others is highly valued in his role as a peer mentor at our school, where he looks after younger students. And then Khadija Soni is also in her final year at school and attended a Rainbow Camp over a year ago. She comes from a large family and has 5 siblings. She loves literature and art and plans to be a freelance digital artist animator in the future. She always enjoys engaging with others and loves connecting with diverse groups of people. Khadija serves on the committee of the Muslim Students Association at school. Welcome to all of our panelists. So let's get straight to the discussion. One of the secrets to the success of our Rainbow Camp is that it takes place in what we would call an island situation. Facilitators and participants are isolated from the world for 4 days. Abdul, as one of our very experienced facilitators, how would you say that this island situation creates the right environment for the Rainbow Camp to be more impactful?
So we create this island situation by taking a group of learners, a group of students out into the middle of nowhere in the mountains for a weekend. So it's about 20 students that we take. Taking them out of this, out into the middle of nowhere where it's just themselves and us as facilitators, it creates a space. We create a space that is conducive and for open discussion, and we do this through a number of strategies. The first step in doing that is that we start the process by establishing ground rules. Ground rules such as not mentioning specific names of people when speaking about hypothetical situations, and also ground rules where they withhold judgment. They do not pass judgment on anything that is being said on camp. In this way, camp becomes almost a social laboratory where apply to particular situations, or they can take their own experiences and share it with others and apply to those apply to the stories that others are telling them. And in this way, they get to find out how they feel and how others feel about their experiences and about other experiences as well. From this point onwards, students are also not allowed to communicate outside of camp. So we tell them not to bring any cell phones with them, and we also don't allow them to have any watches with them. In this way, they cannot be distracted constraints either. So they have no choice but to grapple with whatever sensitive situations in front of them, and to interact with a diverse group of people that's already around them. Throughout camp, we are always reminding students regularly about these ground rules and encouraging them to ask questions, even just for clarity's sake. I mean, in any other setting, such as at home or at school, sometimes asking a question about someone's demographic, about their culture, or about their religion, or about their race or background, sometimes those questions might seem almost taboo. But on camp, this is not the case because of these ground rules that we put in place. And essentially, because of all these ground rules and because of the open discussions that we encourage, students reached and they feel that the weekend has been a life-changing weekend for them.
Thank you, Abdul. So there's clearly power in the isolation and in the building of a space of trust as well. When we select the group for each Rainbow Camp, it's created in an intentionally diverse way. And students are not necessarily acquainted with one another before they attend the camp. Chris, as a past participant, to what extent did this factor help to make the experience more meaningful for you?
Well, with the way that the students weren't necessarily fantastically well acquainted with one another, it called for us all to get to know each other better. It encouraged conversations between us to get to know the basics of one another, but it also provided a place for people to get to know each other on a deeper level. It's human nature to make assumptions about people based on what we think we know about them. And the unfortunate truth is that upon getting to know someone better, one can almost always look back and see that their perceived notions of a person were completely wrong. This was explored in one meeting on the camp, and I had realized that I'd been making these assumptions about even people that were on the camp. But little did I know that one of the people that I had unfairly made an opinion of walked out of the camp with me, with us both being able to call each other a friend. Also, with a large majority of the campers being relatively unacquainted with each other, You didn't really find people clutching to their friends instead of socializing with everyone else. People went about talking with everyone and just getting to know each other better, rather than just sticking with their buddies. And it really enriched the conversations on the camp.
Thank you, Chris. So this physical and I suppose emotional environment which was created seemed to have had quite an effect on you. Thank you for sharing that. Michelle, as the person who's coordinated this camp for the last few years, tell us about how you and your team go about both revealing and challenging bias, prejudice, and racism.
So I should just explain upfront that one of the aspects of this amazing camp is that participants are sworn to secrecy about the details of the events, so that it doesn't ruin the experience for any future campers. So I can't disclose the exact nature of the main activities, but I'll mention some examples. A simple introduction that we use is showing participants abstract images and asking them what they see or what they interpret. And the mere fact that we have different viewpoints demonstrates that we are vulnerable to bias, that we understand the world through our own viewpoints, and we can clash with others when theirs appears wrong to us. For example, an image of a number 6 painted on the ground. If we're standing opposite one another with the number painted between us, to you it might look like a 9, but to me it's a 6. And we can argue and accuse each other of being wrong, but neither of us is wrong. We just have different viewpoints. So these kinds of discussions also help us later on. For this example in particular, it helps us to see that one of the solutions to issues of prejudice is to take a step outside of our realm of experience and reposition ourselves to be able to see from another person's point of view or another person's reality, as Chris mentioned. And other examples of activities involve one where we show students faces of people from different cultures, different ethnicities, and we ask the students to pair those faces with names, which of course elicits stereotypical racial thinking and sets up discussion there. We also elicit some reactions as well by setting up a scenario where participants are required to select individuals from a larger group based on described characteristics. They get limited information about people, and this elicits bias and judgment as well in our thinking of other people and paves the way for further discussions. So we use team activities quite a lot as well, and without sharing too much, those team activities really do bring out all sorts of other reactions and other emotions, which gets us talking quite in depth. We watch a lot of video material as well, and this includes a documentary of teacher Jane Elliott in the 1960s. She was a 3rd grade teacher, and she set up a social experiment with her students where essentially it was a power imbalance situation in the classroom. She conditioned her students to believe that they were better than others based on the color of their eyes. And it's really fascinating for our campus to see how those young children internalized this and started to treat their peers differently, badly, simply because their eye color was not the same. And they began to believe that they were better than other peers. So this elicits discussion as well on how racism is internalized and perpetuated in society. And we can start to bring these conversations home where we're talking about students' experiences themselves, and make it more geared towards our communities and our realities.
Thank you, Michelle. So this experiential learning is very powerful, and it must be fascinating for you, I'm sure, from one camp to the next, to watch young people being immersed in these activities and then coming to self-realization. Thank you. Luca, as somebody who attended Rainbow Camp earlier this year, just before COVID and lockdown, I think we are battling to remember a time before COVID and lockdown, but tell us about how you experienced some of the activities which Mrs. Owen Barnard has mentioned, and what did you learn from them?
The activities were challenging and frustrating because they really challenged the way I thought and acted. But there was always a lesson learned at the end. I learned that I need to ask questions on why things are the way they are. And these activities help change our mindsets for the better. The activities will also assist me in the future to be able to deal with issues such as racism. We learn to think before judging people or the situations they are in because we don't know why they are in those exact situations.
Indeed. Luca, it sounds as if stereotypes and biases were exposed on the camp. And why do you think that these exposures of stereotypes and biases might be valuable?
Examples of these stereotypes were white people are racist, Muslims are rich, black people's hair doesn't grow. With these stereotypes being exposed, we were able to assist one another without judgment by explaining why it is that these stereotypes are not true. By assisting one another, we were able to dismantle these, we could help dismantle these stereotypes within our society and ask each other uncomfortable questions so that we are able to understand different people instead of having preconceived ideas about people. Personally, my stereotypes were influenced by media and what I saw. On camp, other students explained how these stereotypes affected them and how difficult it was to express themselves. This made me realize I was labeling people without any knowledge of the type of person they are. Hearing other students' experiences with stereotypes showed me that the impact of stereotypes or what impact stereotypes had on people. I now know that before making assumptions about people, I should ask questions and do research.
Thank you, Luca. Some profound change, it sounds like, in the way in which you see the world and other people. Chris, back to you. I know that the Rainbow Camp experience engenders a remarkable openness between participants. How did you experience the level of openness between students, your fellow participants, and how did this influence the level of sharing over the course of the camp?
Well, while there were set sessions for discussions as a group throughout the camp, there was also a fairly large amount of free time in which most of us just used it to talk to each other, and get to know each other better. A personal experience that arose from the camp, which I hold very dear to my heart, is the continued interaction over the course of the camp with one Muslim learner that I somewhat knew before the camp, but I never really made much in terms of major conversation with them. So we were acquainted with each other, but not exactly what one would call friends. And personally, I'm a Christian, and I came to the camp knowing very little about the Islamic faith. However, throughout the camp, we spoke quite a lot about our respective faiths, and we educated each other on the values and the beliefs of our own religions. This camp allowed me to learn a lot more about other cultures and religions outside of my own, and it gave me a space to step out of my own bubble, to learn, and in turn to teach. This experience helped me form a bond between myself and this other learner, and we remain friends to this day, and I can't thank Rainbow Camp enough for that. So, yeah.
Thank you, Chris. I love that. To learn and in turn to teach. That's profound. I'm sure that some of these thoughts are very helpful to our audience, and in particular those who run similar programs or would like to start something similar. One of the program's focuses is to encourage open discussion around diversity and privilege in order to appreciate and understand these concepts. As a facilitator, Sibu, how did you experience the students' engagement in discussions around diversity and privilege?
It was great seeing students from different races engage in such constructive dialogue about diversity and privilege. South Africa is a highly diverse country, and therefore it is essential to have these discussions. At the beginning of the camp, students had difficulties in exchanging ideas and opinions about diversity and privilege, as this could be a source of discomfort to many. After taking part in some activities to unpack the advantages of privilege and looking at a few examples addressing these issues, they were able to engage meaningfully in these difficult discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sibu. So the movement from discomfort to meaningful engagement. Khadija, as a participant, how did your understanding of diversity grow during the camp and perhaps in the time thereafter?
Yeah. So until the age of 8, I had lived and gone to school in an area predominantly made of people of the same racial group as me. It was only when I moved to a different area and school did I interact with children who were from different racial and cultural groups as me, from me. And I was introduced to the concept of diversity. And before I was aware that South Africa was made out of millions of people from different racial and cultural groups, but it didn't quite hit home. And for me, Rainbow Camp, it allowed me to put this knowledge that South Africa was made out of different groups. It allowed me to put that knowledge into context, because I was able to have free discussions with other kids from different racial and cultural groups. And by listening to their conversations and to their stories, I learned about the injustices that were faced, and I learned that some of those things that I experienced, and I learned that I could be part of the problem by not saying anything against it, or I could be part of the solution by speaking out against it. And by listening to other people's stories, I could see cracks in the diverse country that South Africa tries to be, and the world should strive to be. And over the course of the camp, my appreciation for diversity grew as I formed close friendships with people who are so different from me in so many different ways, but we are so similar because we all share pain and happiness. And I have Rainbow Camp to thank for that.
Thank you. The idea of listening to one another's stories is very powerful, and that is really, in some ways, the heart of the Rainbow Camp. And Khadija, what about the concept of privilege? Did you come away with a new sense of what privilege is, a new understanding of privilege?
Yes. By listening to the stories of my peers, I learned just how privileged I am and how many things I take for granted. It was a strict reminder that no matter how low in society I think I am, I always have something that the person next to me can only dream of having. And I cannot listen to someone's story to respond with the intent to respond, but rather I have to listen with the intent to listen and to learn so that I can know what to do differently. I learned that there's so much disparity, not between different racial groups, not only between different racial groups, but also within the same racial and cultural groups. And it just made me more dedicated when I came back to the real world. It made me more aware of these differences, and I became more sympathetic and more empathetic to those around me when listening. Yes. So.
Thank you. I like your idea of coming back into the real world after this island situation and becoming more empathetic and sympathetic. Thank you. It seems as though the camp was a transformative experience for you, Khadija. Thank you for sharing that. In education, one often wonders how to maintain the momentum after a learning experience. Abdul, what are some of the everyday strategies that we or others could put into place, or about which we could be more intentional in our lives, in our schools, in our communities?
I think it's important first to say that that it's not just the students who leave Rainbow Camp having taken lessons and having been transformed or found new strategies to cope in the world. We as facilitators, we leave Rainbow Camp feeling the same way as well. I want to talk about two things that we do on camp, but that I've also put into my everyday life. That really has changed the way that I view the world, and that I think can help many people to do the same. One aspect of Rainbow Camp that is crucial is that we expect learners, we expect the students and the participants at the end of every day to keep a journal and to think about what happened during the day and to reflect. So what I do is, my personal method is by keeping a journal and writing down my views, my ideas, my anxieties or frustrations about whatever is happening in the world, whatever is happening around me. And as I mentioned, we do this on camp, and we encourage students to do this. And I've noticed that when I do it, it really helps me. It helps me to grow my sense of empathy for people around me and for myself, and for the world. Another important journal activity that can be done is also thinking about how we react to particular situations, whether we become frustrated or anxious or upset. And you can do this by reflecting in a journal, and this starts a kind of an internal dialogue where you can analyze your own responses to situations and think about maybe better ways to respond, and ask yourself, why do you respond to situations in that way? The other practice that I regularly engage in is, and this is actually something that Professor Jonathan Jansen, the educational expert, speaks about in his collection of tweets, Letters to My Children. He speaks about regularly attending the that whenever the more than I do this, the more as part of your own community, you see yourself as part of another community as well, because you're now attending a ceremony from another group, and you start seeing the similarities between your group and this other group. And the more that you do this, slowly these barriers that you believe has always existed between yourself and other people, they start to slowly disappear, and eventually you start seeing other people. You stop seeing people as being other, and you start seeing yourself as being just one individual, as part and part of many different groups of people.
Thank you, Abdul. If we have time, we may be able to ask the panel to share a few more examples of how they've carried their learnings back into the school. What is fascinating is listening to the panel talk and how themes emerge, the theme of listening, of stories, of compassion, care for one another. It truly is a transformative time for them. Sibu, I'm going to come back to you. If one of the objectives is to encourage growth in young people, and we've heard from some of them how they've grown, and some not so young people as well, how do you think the Rainbow Camp achieves these objectives when it comes to understanding diversity on the one hand and privilege on the other?
Well, students were challenged on a personal level with regards to perceptions and stereotypes. These conversations allowed students to comfortably have discussions about diversity and privilege in a respectful manner. At the end of these discussions, students were inspired to be better citizens and are now able to share experiences, views, and opinions within the school community. Hopefully, wider community as well, about diversity and privilege. I grew up in a rural community where I was not exposed to people of different races, only my own. I personally found the Rainbow Camp to be informative, and I also had to unlearn the views I had about other race groups as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sibu. So these concepts, which so many of us take for granted, are clearly unpacked and understood, and young people and older people take them back into their lives, into their schools and communities. Thank you, Sibu. Before we take a few questions, just a word of thanks to our panel. I'm sure they'd love to engage more with you as you send your questions through to us. I'd like to say a few words about the name of the program, the Rainbow Camp. In the initial euphoric years after the end of apartheid and the dawn of democracy in the 1990s, in the mid-1990s, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, an iconic anti-apartheid figure, coined the phrase, the Rainbow Nation, to describe this new South Africa. In this post-apartheid era, the phrase has been treated with some cynicism, as the original ideals of Mandela and Tutu and others have faded somewhat. However, as a school, we've held onto the name as an ideal for which to strive. A diverse and yet united country. We have some practical take-home tips for you, which we hope have emerged during the course of the discussion, but I'd like to just run through them again so that if you are interested in this concept, you might take some of them or all of them and use them in your own context. The first is the creation of a unique and intimate atmosphere and environment, the island situation. And this environment facilitates impactful learning. The second is open and respectful interpersonal sharing, developing that, and through that developing compassion between participants. The third is using experiential learning activities to reveal and to challenge bias, prejudice, and racism. The fourth, facilitate open communication around diversity and privilege in order to show difference and understanding of privilege. And fifthly, to brainstorm a variety of everyday strategies which can create interventions and facilitate change in the time after a camp as young people go back into their school and their communities. I see we have had some questions that have come through, and let me put them to the panel.
Hello.
Michelle, let me start with you. As our program coordinator, is 4 days long enough to be truly transformative? Somebody is wondering about the length of the camp. Would more days be more beneficial?
It could, yes. Although I think that the 4 days of the camp involve an intense program, which of course makes the experience rich and dynamic, it's possible that extending the time could lead to an interaction fatigue. You know, the students expend a lot of concentration and energy, and they engage deeply over the course of the camp. So I do believe the 4 days are a good amount of time to create an impactful experience. It leaves participants wanting a little bit more, which is a good thing. It gives them an opportunity to take the light of Rainbow Camp further with them on their personal lives. Recently, we've also introduced a mini reunion to the Rainbow Camp at the end of the year for both groups who went, and that helps to strengthen and refresh the lessons learned and the commitments that they made. So it extends the camp a little bit at the end of the year as well. Back to you, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you. One of our questioners suggests they would like to hear more about the anti-racism work done on the program. Abdul, I'm asking you as an experienced facilitator, could you explore this a little bit more for us?
Yes, thank you for that question. Well, we start on the camp. We start speaking about the different levels of othering. We start with stereotypes, how that can escalate towards prejudice and eventually discrimination. And in these types of discussions, race is something that will inevitably come up. In all our experience, when you start talking about stereotypes and prejudice and othering, it's normally a race that is the most prominent kind of idea that comes up. And because the camp is so diverse and we have students from different backgrounds on camp, we have people who have experienced this type of othering, and they've maybe had this type of like stereotypes or discrimination said against them, on camp they are able to tell the rest of the group how they feel about it, or whether these stereotypes are true or not. And as mentioned earlier, because the on camp our rules create such a safe space, learners don't feel that there's a taboo around asking questions or about making comments. And so there's kind of a platform for those who have had these thoughts about others, and for those who have actually experienced those those types of stereotypes and discrimination. There's like a space for open discussion, open dialogue between that, and in that way we are able to tackle racism on the camp. Back to you, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Abdul. So there's a context clearly at Pinelands High School, a context of a very diverse environment. And so the school in its diversity supports, I suppose, if you like, the camp, and the camp supports the school. Perhaps more about that later. Khadija, here's a question about how we manage students who did not get the opportunity to go on a camp, and maybe they feel they've missed out. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Campbell. Yes, so we have 2 camps per year. The second camp is for those who did not have the chance to go on the first camp to go on this camp. And also we try to, those who have been on Rainbow Camp, they try to be the ambassadors from Rainbow Camp to share what they've learned from Rainbow Camp, to share the lessons that was learned, such as having open discussions and listening to each other. And by remembering the things that they've learned from Rainbow Camp and implementing it in their daily life, they can spread the message of Rainbow Camp and the spirit of Rainbow Camp through that togetherness. Yes, I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Khadija. Of course, we'd love to have many more camps, but as you can imagine, they are resource intensive, and we're a busy school. There's a question from one of the people who are participating this afternoon about what other programs in the school support the Rainbow Camp work. In other words, is this a one-off, or are there other opportunities in the school to do this kind of work with young people? Chris, what do you see the school doing from your perspective?
Well, obviously as a school, we aren't just doing one camp and then that's it, and that's all you have towards this sort of lesson. There's a lot more to it. We start with the grade 8s, even as they start arriving at the school. Peer helpers and other leadership bodies lead a sort of orientation week for the grade 8s, in which we look at issues such as diversity and inclusivity. And then we have our entire life orientation program throughout the course of the high school. We have the peer helpers in themselves helping with any issues that any other grades might have, RCL discussions, and also very importantly in general school life. We're a school that very much so tries to tackle these issues. We make it an effort to go out of the way to make sure that these issues are properly addressed. So I think that answers the question. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Chris. Sibu, I'm going to ask you about your feelings about having more than 2 camps a year. There are a couple of questions around this. And perhaps you can contextualize that for us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Campbell. As with all the activities in the school, it is about finding the right balance. Both the staff members and the students have many demands on their time, and our academic program is at the center of what we do. I promise you we would love to offer more camps, but at this point, we feel that we are sufficiently extended. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sibu. Luca, you're a young person in grade 11. You have a year left of school. You went on a rainbow camp just before lockdown. As you look ahead into your life, what do you think you may take into your adult life from the camp, and I guess from the school as well?
Thank you, sir. At camp, we are all put into a safe space where we are able to express how we honestly feel without the fear of being judged. I would like to provide a safe space where people are able to express themselves and not feel judged or feel like they are, not be judged or feel like they are being judged. Sorry. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Luca. Fascinating question that's popped up, and I'm going to ask you, Abdul, if you could answer it. And the question is, how do you reduce stigma and discrimination against atheists, and how might the camp help to do that?
Thank you so much for that question, Samuel. So on camp, what we do is we do our best to, because it's an open space where many different students from different walks of life come into the space, and because of this open discussions that we have, we show learners and we talk about the similarities and the differences between all viewpoints, between all world viewpoints. And in this way, by looking at these different similarities and differences between these different viewpoints, students are able to see that it doesn't matter whether you belong to a religion or whether you are atheist. That in fact there is similar ground that everyone kind of can see, that everyone can relate to. At school, we also teach the book Life of Pi in Matric, which deals very heavily with the differences between fact and truth. And by discussing these concepts about what it means to believe in a fact, or what it means to believe in a truth, students can see that, in fact, their beliefs are all similar anyway. So again, like I said, it doesn't matter whether you're atheist or whether you're religious. We teach children that all viewpoints are valid viewpoints. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you very much, Abdul. We have a couple of minutes left, and I'm going to turn to Michelle Owen-Barnard, who is our coordinator of the camp, and ask her, perhaps in summary, to say how somebody in another organization or in another school might go about putting together this kind of venture in a way which is going to make change in the school.
Thanks, Mr. Campbell. So definitely we are very keen to assist schools if they would like some help in setting up a similar type of experience. But the 5 take-homes that we've left you with, I would encourage, maybe we can just post them in text form as well, but setting up a scenario where an engaged group of students is going to be committed to learning from one another is the primary, is the essence of it. And so whether it's a camp or whether it's a 1-day, 2-day workshop to start with, but creating a space where conversations, the difficult conversations, can be had, creating a space where questions can be asked, and for me, the value of Rainbow Camp is those conversations combined with activities which actually really put you in a situation where you are stretched and where you are put into a situation where your emotion actually emerges, and then you think about it, because that's what happens in life. So yes, we'd be very happy to assist schools with some of the practicalities that we use on camp. But I think the bottom line is creating a space where students are comfortable and committed and can engage in conversations and activities around these topics. That's important.
Thank you, Michelle, for that summary. As we move towards the end, I would just like to say that as principal of the school, I am incredibly proud of this venture, which has been running for 20 years, and for the people who have perpetuated it over the years. And it's been wonderful to work with this panel of people as we have explored what the Rainbow Camp really means and tried to encapsulate it in 45 minutes of conversation. So a big thank you to our panelists and to you, our audience. We hope that you found some elements of what we have talked about to be helpful. And we hope that in some small way, we as a school, together with other schools across the world, can be agents of change in a world which is crying out for social justice and transformation. Thank you. Good afternoon, good night, or good morning, wherever you are.
My name is Vikas Pota. The reason why we're organizing this global showcase for World Education Week is we believe that schools have incredible expertise in making sure that learning outcomes improve. Given the state of the world, we want to see the expertise from this particular school being replicated in schools all over our planet so that the world becomes better for everyone. That is why I congratulate this school for what it does and hope that those listening can take away conclusions as to how they should actually approach their own improvement journeys. Thank you all for participating, and I look forward to seeing you in many of the other events this coming week. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors for supporting this incredible work, without whom we couldn't have put together this global showcase. Thank you, and I wish you well for this event.
Fast-paced social, economic, and technology-driven change is redefining our world. And having a broad range of skills, such as creativity and problem-solving, has become far more important than being able to memorize information. To redefine how our children learn and to empower them for the future, parents, teachers, and policymakers must stop overlooking a powerful part of the solution: learning through play. Play is the rocket fuel of child development, and there is a growing body of evidence to support that play is fundamental for children's positive growth and well-being over time. It is also an essential way to foster the skills required to thrive in today's world. The LEGO Foundation aims to build a future in which learning through play empowers children to become creative, engaged, lifelong learners. To do so, we work with a range of partners around the world to change the hearts and minds of all of those who influence children's lives through our programs, research, and advocacy, so they can all embrace the transformative power of play. Examples of what we do include making sure that caregivers, practitioners, and policymakers understand the importance of play, investigating, testing, and scaling new ways to bring play-based learning into homes and schools, using play to help millions of the world's most vulnerable children cope with adverse childhood experiences and toxic stress, or conducting research with some of the world's leading research institutions. Please visit our website and follow us on social media to learn more.
Language connects us all. It's how friendships are and lessons are learned. Language is how we find understanding and express love. It's how we communicate our successes, both big and small. It lays the groundwork for learning and growth. And for an increasingly diverse student population, it can be the key to achieving achievement in school and beyond. That's why Rosetta Stone Education is dedicated to language and literacy. We offer solutions designed to support teachers and their emergent bilingual students, recognizing and celebrating the knowledge, culture, and languages they bring to our classrooms. Our products are founded on the adaptive blended learning model for individual needs, continuous progress monitoring for better learning outcomes, and culturally responsive pedagogies for more inclusive classrooms. With solutions aligned with proficiency standards, we support language learning while exploring academic subject areas, paving the way to better outcomes. Because for all of us, language is everything.
Dear T4 community, we talk a lot about teachers these days, but we rarely listen to them. Therefore, I am truly excited to join the T4 World Education Week to hear from teachers and school leaders all over the world how we can impact learning together. I am particularly looking forward to the global showcase. 100 schools sharing their expertise and best practices, I believe, will be a huge motivation for other schools around the globe. I'm equally impressed by the T4 Solutions Challenge, its finalists and their solutions to real-world issues in education. This gives me hope that we can, together, turn around education globally. The Jacobs Foundation is a proud supporter of the T4 World Education Week because we share a vision to reimagine learning and education by bringing together the brightest people who understand how children learn. Let's do this together.